Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are on our beautiful planet. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in to another episode of Coaching Outdoors. And today we have our guest, Michael Jospe, all the way from America. We've got a bit of an American theme going on in this series. But Michael, please, brief introduction to yourself. We've got plenty of time to dive into your work, which we are really, really excited about hearing. So yeah, just a couple of sentences as a bit of a introduction to your good self.
Sure. Well, I'm from Boulder, Colorado, and in the United States, and I have since 2004 been running an organization called the Earth-Based Institute, which provides in years past provides direct coaching, and it's evolved into training, and now really focused on career development of coaches. So, and it's nature-based, focused coaching. We call it nature-connected coaching. And our program is an ICF accredited level 2 coach training program.
That's great. That's going to give our listeners and followers a good sort of taster of what's to come on today's podcast. I mentioned to you when we were talking about setting the call up that we've had a number of people mention the Earth-Based Institute. They've either been through the coaching program themselves, or they've talked about being connected with the program. And we've also had quite a number of people from Colorado and around the sort of Boulder area. So there's obviously a hotbed of nature-based coaching going on there, which is wonderful. And we're so happy to be really kind of connected with you guys over there, and for you to be part of this network that is our passion. The first question we always ask every single one of our guests who join us for the podcast is for you to share with us your earliest memory of being outdoors and why you personally love the outdoors so much yourself.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this because, the questions that you sent me beforehand, just thinking about that. And I was reflecting on my earliest memory. I was like, how far back can I go, in my memories around that? And I wasn't the kid that grew up, barefoot running through the woods in my backyard or something like that. That wasn't the case for me. But I did have a strong connection to nature as a young boy. I grew up in Massachusetts, in Concord, Massachusetts, that, had all this history with Henry David Thoreau and Emerson, and very kind of, this very nature focused edge. And so I grew up in those woods and, hiking and cross country skiing in those woods, and spending time just, like I have these early memories, very early memories. I can't quite place where I am, but very early memories of just the silence of nature, and specifically the winter time. And that's always been my favorite. That's still today. Just was out backcountry skiing a few days ago and had that moment of that deep silence of the winter wilderness that just kind of sunk in. But I think, I also grew up going to the beach, going to the coast, and the memory that just keeps resurfacing for me. Maybe I must have been 5 or 6. Is just this digging through the sand, really, and finding these little teeny shells in the sand, and being, at that age, making this kind of connection of what I was seeing and asking these questions of how come these are so small and these other ones are so big, and like trying to understand all of that, but also being able to dig down deep into the sand and finding shells, a foot down in the sand, and being really curious about that. And on this journey of it was like it was an adventure. It was a wander. It was there was so much mystery involved, and I could spend hours there just listening to the waves, feeling the wind of the ocean breeze, the seagulls, and having my hands in the sand like that. And my dad is a big fisherman, and he would always want to fish, and I'd go fish with him. But I could spend the entire day just digging in the sand right there, or right in the break of the waves where there's all these rocks and shells, and just getting into all of that. So when I think of what my earliest memory is, that's what keeps surfacing. That and just the silence, the winter silence.
Oh, thank you for sharing. It's always such a pleasure to see people transport themselves back to
Yeah.
these special places that have been carried with them for their lives. And just hearing you talk, it's such an immersive experience, and that absorption that I really got a feeling for, whether it's that kind of muffled winter, just just I'm always getting like the snowflakes like gently drifting down and amongst the trees, and then that's the feeling of the sand. So no, thank you for that. And clearly time has passed between you were on the beach and in the trees and to where you are now, and your life work. Now as we have this conversation as founder of the Earth-Based Institute, which is one of the longest standing in the world who do this work around nature connected coaching. You're the lead instructor, the curriculum writer. So just I'm kind of conscious of time as well. So it's almost like the career shaping moments for you. Like what are those key moments, and really distilling it down?
Yeah. Well, I have to go to my mentors on that. My greatest mentor, the person who I have dedicated the most education and learning around in terms of nature connection is Tom Brown Jr., who wrote the book The Tracker. And he has a school in the United States here called the Tracker School. And he teaches wilderness survival skills and writes about wilderness survival skills, and the kind of the spiritual relationship to nature, and are very much a living with nature philosophy. His background is in a Native American tradition taught to him through his mentor, who is or was an Apache elder. And so Tom I won't go into his whole story, but when I started reading his books, it really turned things on for me in a huge way. I have one piece that was really important for me is that I have dyslexia, and reading and learning and writing and school was incredibly difficult for me. And nature was not difficult for me. Nature was a place where I could feel that connection and understand myself in a good way. But when I started, his books were literally like, when about 16, 17 years old, were like the first books that I really read on my own. And it changed things for me. I remember walking outside after reading some of his books, and like starting to understand like what was happening around me. Like I was hearing the birds in a different way, and it wasn't just this sound of birds. It was like there was some communication that was happening. I could start to understand that in a different way. I could see the tracks. I could see tracks that I didn't even know were there. And there was more than just seeing this imprint. It was like I was starting to become more immersed in the animal that was leaving the tracks and what was happening in that moment. So tracking and wilderness skills like that were foundational to my development in this work. That's how I got into nature connected coaching, was through the wilderness. It wasn't through psychology or coaching or anything like that. I put those pieces together in to kind of understand what was happening really for me and why this was so important to me, and how do I help other people have those connections with nature. So those philosophies that were taught by Tom, and then his first student, John Young, who started the Wilderness Awareness School and wrote a few wonderful books. And I got to spend a good chunk of time, about a year or so, living very closely with John and mentoring with him and tracking and nature education, nature awareness, and so forth. So all of that was happening right in my end of my college years. I was studying outdoor education, outdoor recreation leadership is what it was called, where I was learning to take people backcountry skiing and rock climbing and down rivers and all that kind of stuff. But nobody was talking about what was happening for them in those moments. And nobody was really talking about the relationship that we had with the land and the river and all of that. And so I had this background of from Tom that was really about the transformational experience of being in nature, and not just, how do you immerse yourself in nature, but how do you have a relationship with it? How do you collaborate with it in your life? How do you experience and be with it as if it is a relative in your life? And that's how I've always approached nature. Once I started really, it's what made sense to me once I really started studying Tom's work. And I've been training with Tom since I was 17, 50 years old now. So, I'm pretty dedicated to that whole world, and it has had a huge influence on Earth-Based Institute. Tom has had a huge influence, whether he knows it or not. If he ever listens to this, he has had a huge influence. And then so there's a few other important experiences. When I graduated high school, I got to go do a NOLS trip, and NOLS is a National Outdoor Leadership School, and I did a 30-day backpacking trip in Alaska. And when I came back from that trip, there was so much had changed for me. And this was not a therapeutic, this wasn't a wilderness therapy kind of a thing. This was just a very straightforward leadership kind of experience. But when I came back, I was tuned in ways that I didn't prepare for. My senses were alive. I felt really healthy and strong and alert and clear, and kind of amazed at how slow I was moving inside of myself. And it didn't really impact me that much until things started to change, right? Until that wore off. I now call that the wilderness high. I've learned to call that the wilderness high. And it really is something that kicks in. I found after about 72 hours of being out in the wilderness without any sort of real facilitation, your brain starts to change. You start to entrain with the frequency of that wilderness environment, and it has an impact on your nervous system, on your mind. And I didn't realize that at 18 years old, right? But when everything started to kind of dull again around me, and my relationships started to kind of go back into the old ways of being and so forth, is when I really began to pay attention to what the heck happened out there, because that to me was just the impact of being immersed in nature without any sort of other component to that. Just that deep immersion in nature had this huge impact. So that really activated some more professional questions for me about what is that? What is happening in that relationship? Is there a way that we can make that faster? Do we have to go out for 72 hours to be able to do that, to have that impact? But most importantly, how do we integrate that into our life? How do we support that transformation into our life and have that be something that really changes our life? So that though these questions became a huge motivator in starting the Earth-Based Institute and creating the curriculum around nature-connected coaching. And that, when I first started, I was working primarily because I was interested in this idea of integration. So I was primarily working with teens and young adults that were returning home from wilderness therapy. They had just spent 120 days, 90 days out in the wilderness, going through a very intensive treatment. And how do they integrate back into their life? So that's really how I started in this whole world of coaching. And I figured out I had to go get a certification and I had to, do all that kind of stuff to be able to do it. Um, and uh, and through that work, there was other moments where I worked for Naropa University and helped them get their master's in wilderness therapy up, and and was offering different programs, educational programs to different colleges and therapeutic applications of nature and wilderness. And then people started to really ask me, will you train me in this work that you do? Because because I was also taking individual clients out into the wilderness and doing one-on-one coaching and guiding with them. Will you train me in this? And that's really how the certification program came to be, was through people asking for that training. And now we're taking applications for our 32nd cohort of students to go through the program starting in June. And so it's evolved quite a bit, this idea of Earth-Based Institute and what it looks like and all the changes that it's gone through over the years. But that's how it all kind of came to. There's all sorts of little pieces. I'm trying to make it as condensed as possible for you, but hopefully that's enough. Okay.
I mean, we just love hearing people's stories about how they've got to where they are and the influences, and everybody's different. And that's one of the things that really comes to life with outdoor coaching is people come to it from so many different avenues of life, so many different life experiences. And I just love the way you describe the nature high, the kind
Yeah.
of, and you're absolutely right. How can we help our coaching clients have that experience, but maybe not with, having to go out into nature for 3, 4, 5 days, maybe.
Right.
So there's some really great stuff there, and we honestly, we could spend hours and hours and hours talking to you. But one thing that's really struck home for us, I think, is that you really are a trailblazer for this whole nature-based coaching and the understanding of that. Because I mean, I believe that the Earth-Based Institute was founded in 2004. Is that correct? Yeah. So you've been doing this for a long time.
I know.
So it would be lovely to just get a little bit more insight into all those bits you've just talked about just now. How did that turn into the Earth-Based Institute? How did you suddenly say, I'm going to found an institute and this is what it's going to do? What encouraged you to do that?
Yeah. Well, I remember I was preparing to go for another round of mentoring with John Young, and he had asked me to kind of write him a letter of what I wanted out of that experience. And I was sitting under this tree by this river and outside of Crested Butte, Colorado, um, and there was this, big kind of download of really of an organization, of a learning organization, and yeah, I mapped it all out, and really kind of felt this desire that felt really called to that, felt like that vision was what I was called to create. And it's different than what I had saw in my mind at that moment, of course. um and then there were a few other moments where for years I worked, before I got into all of this, I was working in just outdoor education, working at a outdoor science school in California, where we had something like 6,000 kids from the Central Valley of California come through a year. And you would get a group of 30, kids, fifth, sixth graders that you would be responsible for that week. And I just loved working with these kids because I would get them out to go do some of these nature connection scout skills kind of a thing that were tracking and awareness and that kind of stuff. And I loved doing that. And I remember going to a meeting with the other, we were called naturalists. That's what our title was. So with the other naturalists, and the head naturalist at that time said something like, "I think I got to that one kid. I think I touched that one kid today." And he's like, "It just makes it all worth it." And I remember sitting there being like, we have 6,000 kids come through here and you just want to reach one? I understood the concept, right? I understood that concept of like, if I could just get to that one person. But for me, I was like, that's not what I want. That's not the ripple effect that I feel called to be a part of in this world. Like, we have to impact more people than one, right? And hopefully, yes, that one person can go out and impact other people. But that that was a wake up call for me in this, and like, this is not the world that I want to be in. I feel like I have to go and create my own thing here. So I think those were some of the moments of what really kind of inspired this. But you know, I also really saw in the field that I was going to school in this outdoor recreation leadership kind of field, there was also this real, and I don't know if it's the same now, but back then there was this kind of belief that you couldn't really make any money doing this, and that you were basically going to live in the back of your pickup truck, and you weren't going to have a relationship or any meaningful real long-term relationship with anybody. And then eventually you're going to say, well, I need to get a real job, and so I'm going to go hang up my climbing shoes and go do something else. That was fun. And I remember being like, that's unacceptable to me. Like, there's a career here, and a real career. And I started to really think about that in regards to what I was teaching people and what I was training people in. And that, I would say, in the last few years, that's has really started to crystallize for me. In how do you have a successful career as a nature connected coach, as a nature focused, passionate individual who just wants to help people and help the earth? How do you do that? How do you make a living doing that? Where that is not set up around us. There isn't, we all have to, you use the word pioneers. We all have to be pioneers on that end. We all have to have some kind of, I really feel like the field of coaching, and certainly nature connected coaching, is really an entrepreneurial career. And yes, you can get a job as an in-house coach. You can get a job for different organizations and so forth. But even to find those jobs, you have to be entrepreneurial. And so there's skills that I didn't have when I started out. I just wanted to help people, and I loved the earth, right? So maybe these two things can come together in a good way, and it did, and I got lucky, and people signed up and loved it. But I didn't really know what I was doing, how to run a business, how to build my coaching practice, those kind of things. And I saw that happen over and over and over, and with my students, that they didn't know how to do that either, and I wasn't really helping them do that. So that really started to change things for me in regards to Earth-Based Institute of, how can we really help these students learn the entrepreneurial skills to become successful. And, I always say that, that's not something that us nature lovers are always thinking about, how to run a business, right? So, got to learn how to do it. And I think there's some really very soulful ways of going about doing that. It doesn't have to be slimy and salesy and all that. It can be very connected, very, very heartfelt, very nature focused. But
and this was very much one of the things when I was looking into your program that struck me as a differentiator. A lot of coach programs, it's the skill of coaching to be a coach, and then the business development piece is
you're on your own. Yeah,
briefly touched on. So yeah, I was kind of curious to find out a little bit more about like the support that you do offer, and then whether you have some, I don't know, examples of former students that you'd be able to share to really bring it to life. It would be great to hear.
Wonderful. Yeah, so we have updated our program to now it's no longer just kind of a 1-year certification and off you go. It is now a 2-year program, where the first year is focused. I mean, it doesn't have to look like this, but it's primarily, the first year is primarily focused on getting your nature connected coaching certification. So learning how to be a nature connected coach, what does that look like? How is that different from other forms of coaching and so forth, going through our curriculum. And while you're doing that, we're also starting to guide you through some business development and entrepreneurial skills while you're going through that. And we have a kind of a step-by-step curriculum that you follow that is geared to help you put the business together and start to generate clients. Like, I'll kind of guide you through that whole process through kind of a pre-recorded and organized curriculum. But that's kind of a resource that's available, I should say, to all of our students. They have access to that, and they can go through it at their own speed. But really, the second year of the program is more intensive on the business development side of things and obtaining your ICF credential. And so every week, and you, like I said, you can be doing this at any time, but every week I run business mentoring calls. And so, students can come to those calls when they're ready, when they want some support, and I'll coach you through your next steps, that kind of thing. Different resources that I want you to read, and programs to look into and stuff like that to help you get that business going. And really, the focus is really getting clients, right? There's one thing, there's this aspect about building your business, which is really important, and growing that business. But for people who are coming out of the certification program, they just need clients. They need that first 5 to 10 clients where they're making some money, they're getting the practice and the experience that they need. And so that is like the main focus right there for the first year and a half, is getting those clients. How do you get those clients? How do you find them? How do you get those referrals to come into you? How do you ask them to pay you? How do all of those kind of skills are essential. And so they, like I said, they've got this curriculum that they can follow with it, but really it's the high touch component of the program that I think is what is most helpful for people. And students can also, they have access to my calendar. They can schedule one-on-ones with me whenever they want. And we'll, have strategic meetings and get things organized and next steps and so forth. So the biggest challenge that I face with that is getting students to take advantage of it. Everyone's got such busy lives and so many things going on in their life. Oftentimes students will get to the end of that 2 years and be like, oh, shoot, I didn't take advantage of this. And so we're, trying to figure out, we were just talking today before our call here, like, how do we help students, begin to understand the importance of these calls and the importance of all of this way in advance? What do we have to do, halfway through the program and so forth, to help people really be successful? Because we don't want people to get to that point at the end of the program to realize, I just spent all this money and all this time and I don't have the clients. There's no reason to not have clients coming in. So thinking about some examples here, one of the things that I really support my students to develop is what I call their professional referral network. And I see this as I call it the beeline to getting those initial clients in. So students that are doing that, I'm trying to think about how to present this. One student who has a background in community development and has been working with developing a community for I'm going to steer away from I want to maintain confidentiality. Community development has been working on developing a community for her network of people, and was having a really difficult time trying to convert and shift that into a coaching business for herself. How do I want to coach people? I don't want to just be a community host all the time. I want to start coaching people and really bringing them out into nature and really helping them make these changes in their life. So an example of working with her was helping her begin to develop the confidence that she needed to be able to approach that network, that database essentially that she had already created, with an offer for them to begin to become coaching clients. And very quickly, once we started to get her mind organized in that particular way and begin to feel like she really had something to offer, and that's really the big piece, is, do I really have something to offer here? That is something that I work on with a lot of students. Within like 2 weeks, those first 3 clients start to come in, and I encourage my students to to work on long-term contracts, so high-ticket coaching services right out of the gate, as opposed to kind of small step-ins. Like, let's get some, 5 or 6 clients that are paying you for a long-term process. So that's what we're really working on. So that's what I'm referring to when those first 3 clients came in. They're each paying her several thousands of dollars for, 3 months of coaching work. So she's got a kind of some income generated there, and is beginning to bring in more. Another student who really no background at all in coaching, but a real passion for nature and a real desire to want to help people and so forth, career changer, with, like I said, no real background in coaching, little bit of business background, but not a whole lot. And he once I started to help him identify that professional referral network for himself and begin to interact with the right people within that network, I mean, literally within 24 hours, he got his first referral that turned into I think like a $5,000 client right there. Like, how many of those do you need to feel like something is happening in your business, where then you can sit back and there's no website that's been created. There's no all this other stuff, right? Because that is all important to do, but it's actually not what's going to bring in those first few clients. Is not your website. It's your relationships. It's your engagement with people. It's the trust that you build with folks. And so there's a couple of examples right there.
And it's so fascinating for me because from what you're talking about there, honestly, it is ringing true of my experience of setting myself up as a to work for myself. Obviously, my background is I did quite a lot of coaching in-house in various different organizations in the world of talent management and L&D and stuff. But that confidence, it's that word. And as soon as you said it, I was like, that's what it is. It's that confidence when you set yourself up as an individual coach to go out there and contact people, to look at your network, as you mentioned, and to draw in the people and to work out what, like you said, work out what it is you're offering and be confident in what you're offering as well. And it's something that's come up on a number of the podcasts with other guests as well, and something that I've had quite a number of clients in the past who've been coachees who want to become coaches, and they talk about this as well. What are their limiting beliefs? What are their where's the confidence problems or issues, and how can they overcome them to say, actually I can do this, and I have got something to offer.
Right.
And then with the nature pieces, that's almost one of those great unique selling points, because people like yourself have been doing this a long time, but especially, I mean, over here in the UK and other parts of the world as well, it's still seen as quite a niche type of coaching. And it's one of those things, a lot of people talk about being able to give themselves permission to take their coaching practice outside, so they can be, they'll sit in a room and coach, but am I allowed to go outside with my clients? Can I do outdoor coaching? So the work that you're doing as part of your certification, I think, is just so important, and really very much needed in other training and around the world of outdoor coaching. One of the other things we'd like to get a little bit of information about, and a couple of examples and your sort of experiences of this, you also offer, I believe, vision quests and sort of that individualized wilderness experiences as part of the program as well. We've had a couple of guests talk about vision quests before, and some of our followers really love that whole kind of approach. So it'd be lovely to hear a bit about how you utilize those within the Earth-Based Institute certification.
Well, that's my love right there, is the quest. That's an important part of my story as well. So a couple things I'll just say is that we don't call it a vision quest, we call it a wilderness quest. And because vision is one thing that you might quest for. There are many reasons to quest. And there are and wilderness is a wonderful place to quest. And it's, you see this pan culturally and through generations and generations of people seeking wilderness for clarity, healing, different reasons for that quest. And as you deepen into a life of questing, really, because it's a practice of development, of nature connection and your relationship and your own personal and spiritual growth, that experience of a quest evolves in many different ways. Your first quest that you do is often a very physical quest, like, can I survive this experience in the wilderness? But as you continue that journey of questing in your life, you realize that you're always in a quest. And there's always an opportunity to listen to nature in that particular way. But the rite of passage experience, that kind of classic quest of, a 4-day fast in the wilderness, where you are, you're fasting from food, perhaps. You're fasting from the busyness of your life and technology and all of those kind of things. And you're exposed more to the elements. You're not like tucked away in a tent or something like that. You're out there, maybe under a tarp, and you're isolated. And those are really important components of this deep inward journey that you go on in the quest. And I think that it is the ultimate nature connection experience. In fact, for years, it was required in order to get your nature connected coaching certification that you had to quest. And you didn't have to quest with me, but you needed to quest because you needed to see how what you had been learning to do as a nature connected coach is directly tied to this ceremony of the quest and that process of deep listening in nature and then living that vision that you gain from the quest. In many ways, you could say that a nature connected coaching experience is a mini quest, because you're removing yourself from your normal day-to-day experiences. You're going out into nature to gain a certain clarity around certain things, and then you have to integrate that and bring that back into your life, very similar as the ceremony of quest. And we actually call the nature connected coaching experience a ceremony. In the training, we talk about it as a ceremony. And so the questing is, I think, essential for anybody who does this kind of work. And one of the reasons why I really plugged it in there at different times into our curriculum is, I was training a lot of people who are going into wilderness therapy where they were going to be field staff. And oftentimes these field staff would put their participants out on a quest, but they themselves had never been on a quest. And so how can you do that? You don't really know what you're asking these people to go do. And you haven't experienced that for yourself of what that's like to be isolated, and certainly in the wilderness therapy environment where you're dealing with trauma and addiction and all sorts of things. You got to know what you're doing if you're going to put people out there in that way. So the quest, gosh, that is I think one of the most important experiences that you can have as a nature connected, nature focused guide. If you really want to have a deep transformational lifelong relationship with nature in that particular way, where nature is a powerful force in your development, your spiritual development, your psychological development, then questing has historically been the way to go do that. And it is a life. There's an invitation there to have questing be a part of your life, be your practice in a way. But it is gosh, that's a big one for me, really important.
Mm. And thank you for your description of this and how important it is, and just whether there's a talking of a like bringing it to life with whether one of your experiences or experience of one of your students that you've observed, that would just bring it all together perfectly.
I see. Okay. Well, they're all such personal experiences. Yeah, I do. I see. I have more of a tendency to talk more in general about it. So, let me share more on a personal level about quest that I've been on, one of my quests that I've done. So this may have been actually the first quest that I ever did. Before I ever started guiding people or training people in questing. And I was in my early 20s, and had not yet started Earth-Based Institute, had not yet really committed to any real kind of professional track like I'm on now. And was curious about that, was wondering about, where am I going in my life? What am I, not so much what are my next steps, but what's my purpose, really? I had all this training, all this experience from Tom and from other, John and other people that have mentored me and guided me, and all this training experience, but where was I going with it? And it's interesting because, and this happens to me, and I know it happens with some of the people that I've guided to as well, is that initial intention is what gets you across the threshold. But what really happens is past that, is beyond that. You can't stay focused really on that. It's just that initial intention is what gets you there, what gets you across that threshold and into the quest. And so I remember going out to go find my solo spot, my site, and this was in the desert in Utah, and in these beautiful canyons. And I was kind of walking up this hillside up to where the kind of the canyon wall met the hill, met the slope. So I found myself right on that point right there. There was a trail that I found, and I was walking down that trail, and I realized that what I was walking down was a bear trail. And this was where a bear was on a circuit. Bears move in circuits like this. So it was in this was very clearly this bear's trail that I was on. And I'm walking along, and you're on a curvy canyon wall like this, and I'm going along, and around the corner comes the bear. Like, what are the chances of that? Because these bears are, they're on like a 30-mile circuit. So somehow we kind of got at the same place, same time. And he comes around this corner of the canyon and doesn't see me until I stop him in his tracks. He's just cruising along, and close enough that I could see his eyes focusing on me. And I love these moments. I love bears. I love these moments with bears where they're so sweet. And you think of bears in kind of a scary way, but these black bears is what they are out there are not. They don't interact with people. They don't really know in those wilderness environments, they're timid and really soft and gentle. And anyways, we locked eyes for a moment, and then he turned around and ran off. But right where he turned around was this crack essentially in the rock wall that I could very easily, with like stairs almost, climb up onto this platform. And it was this amazing cliff overlooking the canyons with an overhang that I could sleep under. And this was my spot. The bear essentially showed me that spot. And that's a big part of questing for me, is listening and following the animals through that. So anyways, I am I find my spot. I go through whatever process I need to go through to determine if I'm going to stay here and all of that. And I'm climbing down to go back down to camp and kind of start to get myself organized. And in the wash of the creek bed in the bottom of this canyon, there was a baby cub that was dead. It had been swept in a flash flood. And it was a real shocker for me to come across that. But immediately I started to understand more about what my quest was really about. And there was something about this young male bear, probably, age-wise similar, that showed me where my spot is, but also this young cub that was, had passed on. And that started to illuminate more about what I was really there to do for that quest, why I was called into the wilderness for that. And I really feel like that's how a quest starts. You kind of feel called into the wilderness for some reason, and you organize yourself around that in some way. But once you start getting into it, you start to learn a whole lot more. So that, was, I hadn't even started my quest at that point. Like and on some level I had, because I was like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm going for it. And and was working with my guides around this. And it really, like, I don't know how much more to share about the entirety of the quest, but that became the theme of what I was working with over those 4 days. And who I was going to be when I came out of that quest. Who did I want to be? Who was I called to be? And I in some way I could say that really set me on my path. I really, I started guiding quests after that. I started taking my clients out in that kind of form of deep self-discovery through interactions with nature. But it's those experiences, like what separates, I think, nature connected coaching from other forms of nature immersion or whatnot. It's that kind of quest-like experience that we're going for in our interactions with our clients, the way that we're inviting our clients into nature for in a coaching context, though. But it's not about just sitting under a tree and talking about your life. It's about including the environment. It's about listening to the environment. It's about realizing that nature can reflect, is participating, is engaging. And in professional coaching, one of the tenets is partnering with your client. And as a nature connected coach, we're not just partnering with our client, but we're also partnering with nature. And we're inviting our client to partner with nature as well. And to open their ability to listen to nature and see the cues, and not just the cues that the landscape shows, but, like the example of running into that bear or finding the cub. These are not things that were obviously planned, right? They were not planned, but they happened because I was following something, because I was listening to something, and I was following something that was about a kind of an internal guidance in a way. And developing that in the coaching relationship with our clients, encouraging them to interact with nature through that internal guidance. And what it's showing you is really what I feel like I'm trying to train people in nature connected coaching. And becoming an ICF certified coach is like a bonus. I mean, how cool is that to be able to do that kind of stuff and get a professional credential for it?
It really rings true as well for me, because I did some research a couple of years ago, and a number of the people I spoke to, a number of the coaches I spoke to, talked about their clients having moments in nature. And what you were just describing there, they were talking about, somebody who is having challenges with dealing with grief, and they saw a robin. And robins for a lot of people are representations of people who've moved on, who are visiting them, or coming to show them that things are okay. For some people, another lady, she had a real moment with a sheep who reminded her of a sheep that she used to have on her grandma's farm when she was younger. And I think you're absolutely right. I think enabling people to be open to these things coming along at that moment, and it's always just the moment when you need them to, and there they are, and being able to help them explore what that means for them. And also just to highlight as well, because you live in a very big country compared to our little wee island of the United Kingdom, and obviously some people who are watching this will live in equally big areas. And I think the really important thing as well is these quests can be done in a big scale, like you're talking about, like true wilderness, or people can find them in their local forests, or in their local woodlands, or in their walking along their local coastal path, or it doesn't have to necessarily be somewhere that's 20 hours drive away from the rest of the world. And so all of these things, they can be close to home, but it's all, as you said, it's about taking yourself away. It's about removing yourself from all those things like technology. It's about immersing yourself, being in that sort of bubble, as you said, not alone, but on your own, as it were, and having that experience wherever that works for you. And I think there's just some really wonderful examples there, and some things I think a lot of our listeners will go, oh, I'm going to go and try that if they haven't already. So just to kind of start to wrap this up a little bit, and I mean, you've shared so much with us, and as I said, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. But just to kind of bring it down, sort of filter it down a little bit in terms of practical things for our listeners and our followers, kind of next steps. what resources would you recommend for them if they listen to this or watch this and think, oh, I'm really interested in this? What kind of resources would you point them towards looking at reading? You've mentioned a couple of books already. What other resources do you think would be really useful for people who want to really get a flavour for this?
And when just in terms of what you mean by this, are you referring to nature connected coaching, or are you referring to nature connection in general, or
Both?
either?
Yeah,
Both. Okay.
either or.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so on just a very broad scale of that, I think the most important resource is your relationship to nature. So having a practice, a dedicated practice of nature connection. Many people have dedicated practices to meditation or to yoga or something like that. Including nature awareness in that, I think, is really important. And it's not even so much about some sort of metaphorical or bringing some deep question out on the land, as much as it's about observation and bringing yourself into a place of silence internally so you can really observe and connect to nature. I think that that is the most important resource right there. Everything comes from that. If you are on, in terms of your creativity and intuition and ideas and so forth, your clarity um, from a nature connection relationship, that's the most important thing, is the most important resource. So I think personally, in the way that I approach nature connected coaching, the way that I approach my clients, all the answers are there. They're all there. Nature's got it all. Okay. And so if you bring the questions that you have out onto the land and you really listen, you will find the answers. I believe that wholeheartedly. And if you want to be a nature connected coach, that trust in nature is probably the most important skill set to develop, is trusting that nature will provide in that way. And that you actually, as a coach, don't have to do anything. You just need to bring your client out into nature and to help them learn to listen and engage with it in that way. And then you help them integrate, you help them process that. So, relationship to nature, developing a deep trust in nature is essential. And remember, your client is nature. So, their brain is nature, their body is nature, their development is nature. So learn to trust your client as well on that end, trust in yourself. So in terms of other kind of resources that I think can really help support that trust and that listening in nature, I would definitely encourage books by Tom Brown Jr. And by John Young. We use one of the books that we use in our curriculum is called The Coyote's Guide to Nature Connection. And it's a textbook really for educators. And so it is not necessarily the direction that we take as nature connected coaches around education and curriculum development and so forth. But there's just really wonderful techniques and skills and tools that are in that book. Great book. The other one that John wrote that is really wonderful is called What the Robin Knows. And this is all about bird language. And if you've read that, you know that it changes the way that you notice and listen to birds. And what I've found and what I've been taught by my mentors is that if you want to really understand the language of nature, the subtleties of what's going on out on the land, you got to know how to listen to the birds because they're communicating all of that. They're like, the observers of the landscape. And then some other resources, gosh, there's a lot, but I would anything about understanding the way our nervous system works and how our brain and mind work together, and how relationship, our nervous system's interaction and process through relationship. I think that's really key as well in terms of understanding our interaction and relationship to nature. We've got quite a bit of resources out there in regards to interpersonal neurobiology and so forth. So really good stuff there. And then to be training yourself in business skills, entrepreneurial skills. I think that's really essential as well. There's a lot of great different resources out there that that you can find. I could say that there's there's different there's different aspects to business, right? There's like marketing, and there's sales, and there's business structure, and so forth. So all of those would have different resources that we use with our students. Let me think if there's other ones here. How's that? You want me to? Is that good enough? Okay.
Definitely more than good enough.
Okay, good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your generosity in sharing so much. And I love the contrast that we've had in our conversation today, very much around the business and the importance of business, and then the wilderness quests as well. It's just been two contrasts, which you've interwoven with your backstory and your knowledge and your skills, which are absolutely immense. And thank you for the resources as well. And there's definitely a couple that I'm going to take away and put on my list to check out in the future. So most importantly, where can our listeners and watchers find out more about your work and get in touch?
Yeah. Well, our website is earthbasedinstitute.org, www.earthbasedinstitute.org. You can email us at info@earthbasedinstitute.org. We have a YouTube channel where we have different videos that we've put up over the years, answering different questions or exploring different concepts of nature-connected coaching. And those are probably the best ways to find out more about us and get in touch with us. We love talking with people and getting to know what calls you in to this work. When a lot of people find us and they just want to know like what's the cost and what's all this stuff around the program, which I completely understand. And we're looking for people who are called into this work, that are willing to pick up the phone and call us, to send us an email, that kind of thing, to share a little bit about who they are and what it is that they see as a need in the world that they believe nature and coaching can really support. And that's what we build our work around at Earth-Based Institute, is helping our students make those ideas, support those ideas to come together and help them to be pioneers and be successful in that. So reach out to us. If you listen to this, let us know how it impacted you, and share your vision.
It's been such a treasure trove of stuff today. Thank you so much, Michael. And as I said, we've had a few guests who have been through your program, and they talk extremely highly of it as well. So, listen to some of our other podcasts as well. Reach out to Michael and just find out more, because there is just so much there. And we hope you've enjoyed this podcast today. And if you are interested in any of our other podcasts, we have a full back catalogue catalogue of all of our episodes on www.coaching-outdoors.com, and we will be releasing more in the future. Thank you again, Michael, so much for today, and we look forward to sharing this with our followers and our listeners.
Wonderful. Thank you for inviting me.
So if you enjoyed what you've heard,
Like it
share across your network.
and subscribe to our YouTube channel and LinkedIn community page, the Coaching Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks so much in advance for your support.